Welcome, my amazing students. In today's lesson, we'll be looking at words associated with sports and intonation. In words associated with sports, Miss Ada and Mojo will be taking us through the lesson. So sit back and enjoy the.
What's associated with sports? You must have participated in sports before, but today we're going to look at words. What is sports? Sports is an activity that requires strength and skills. Sometimes it can be in an individual sport or a collective sport, team sport. It is sometimes done to entertain. Our first sport is volleyball. What is volleyball? It is a team sport in which two teams of 6 players are separated by net. Each team tries to score points by grounding a ball on the other team's court. That is what we call volleyball. It's a team sport. Next, we have football. Football is a game played by two teams of 11 players each who tries to score the opponent. Most of us have enjoyed watching the game of football. Basketball. This is a team sport in which two teams of 5 players each on opposing side on a rectangular court. They try to see if they can get as much point as possible. Cricket. It is a bat and ball game played between two teams of 11 players each. Like football, they have 11 players. Chess is a board game played between two players on a checkered board. Have you ever played chess? It is really an interesting game. Darts, as our next game, dart, is a competitive sport in which two or more players bare-handedly throw small sharp-pointed darts at a round board known as a dartboard. Hockey. Hockey is a game played on a sports field between two teams of 11 players who each have curved stick. You can also have ice hockey. Fencing is a sport in which two competitors fight each other using thin sword with tips that are covered. It's called fencing. Skiing. It's the use of ski to glide on snow. That is skiing. The use of ski to glide on snow. Rugby is a football game played with an oval ball by two teams of 15 or 13 players depending on the kind of league they are playing. Archery. It is a sport of using a bow and arrow to aim at a target. A sport of using a bow and arrow to aim at a target. That's called archery. Aerobics. Aerobics is a form of physical exercise that combines rhythmic aerobic exercise with stretching and strength training routine. Aerobics. Remember, we do aerobics every Thursday morning. Athletics. This could either be a track or field event, and it is done with strength. Competitive also in nature. Wrestling. It is a sport that involves two competitors, each trying to force the other to touch the ground with some part of the body. That's wrestling. Boxing is a combat sport in which two people, usually wearing protective gloves and other protective equipment, throws punches at each other for a predetermined amount of time in a boxing ring. Boxing. Karate. A form of sport on armed combat using the hands and feet to deliver and block blows. Karate. Swimming is an individual or team sport that requires the use of one's entire body to move through the water. Do you know how to swim? Table tennis. It is a sport in which 2 or 4 players hit a lightweight ball back and forth across a table using a bat. The bat is usually small and hard. Tennis. It is a game in which two opposing players, single or doubles, usually using rackets to hit a ball over a net on a rectangular court. What she holds is a racket. Most of you must have seen it. Ice skating. Ice skating is the sport of gliding across on an ice surface on blades fixed to the bottom of the shoes. Horse racing. It is a performance sport typically involving two or more horses ridden by jockeys. That is called horse racing. Finally, we have judo. Judo is a system of unarmed combat which intends to train the body and mind. It involves using oaths and leverage to unbalance the opponent. Some other words on sports which I would like you to go look up and get meaning include gymnastics, badminton, handball, cycling, surfing, rowing, golf, water polo, and light weightlifting.
Next, we'll be looking at the topic intonation, and two native speakers will be teaching us this topic.
I'm Kai. Welcome to Oxford Online English. In this lesson, you can learn about intonation in English.
How important is intonation? Let's see. Look at a sentence. Do you need some help? It's a simple question. But by changing the intonation, you can change the meaning completely.
For example, it can be a simple question where you're really offering to help. Do you need some help?
It can be a rhetorical question where you don't really think the person needs help, but you want to be polite. Do you need some help?
It can show that you're annoyed with the person you're talking to. Do you need some help?
It can be sarcastic. Do you need some help?
It can show surprise that the other person might need your help. Do you need some help? There are other possibilities too.
You can see that intonation is a very powerful tool. Controlling your intonation is important for communication in spoken English. So, let's start at the very beginning. What actually is intonation? There are 7 possible intonation patterns in English. Rising, falling, rising, falling, falling, rising, flat, high, low. The most important are the first 4, rising, falling, and combinations of rising and falling tones. Flat tones, including high and low tones, aren't common and don't have many uses, so we won't talk about them today.
However, rising and falling tones can each have many different meanings. Keep this in mind. One intonation pattern does not mean one thing. The same intonation can have different meanings in different situations. Also, intonation is flexible. There are rules, but the rules are not 100% fixed. Different people speak in different styles. Let's practice. Here's a word. Let's try saying the word with different intonation patterns. Repeat after me. Rising. Where? Falling. Where? Rising, falling. Where? Falling, rising. Where?
Let's try one more time with 2 words. How many? Rising. How many? Falling. How many? Rising, falling. How many? Falling, rising. How many?
If you can pronounce these 4 intonation patterns, you can already do most of what you need in English. So, how do you use these intonation patterns? The most basic rule is that you use a falling tone to show the end of a sentence. For example, I live in Madrid. She's a lawyer. We might be a bit late.
You can use a rising tone to show that your sentence isn't finished yet. For example, I live in Madrid, but I was born in Canada. She's a lawyer, although she isn't working at the moment. We might be a bit late because I don't finish work until 7. That's the most basic rule. And it's important. If you don't use rising and falling tones in the right places, people won't understand whether you've finished speaking or not. However, there are many other ways to use these intonation patterns. Let's look at another. Did you get some bread?
I thought you were going to get the bread.
How are we going to make sandwiches if we don't have any bread?
We can go to the bakery and buy some sandwiches there.
But I think the bakery is closed on Saturdays.
It's not Saturday today, it's Sunday.
Oh. Can you work out what was going on in that dialogue? After the first question, did you get some bread? You heard 5 sentences. Listen again if you need to. Can you hear the intonation? Before, you heard that you use falling intonation at the end of your sentence. But here, the pattern is often the opposite. I thought you were going to get the bread. Do you know why that is?
This is our second rule about intonation. You use a falling tone to show that information is new, and you use a rising tone for old information. In this sentence, the bread has already been mentioned, so it's old information, and you pronounce it with a rising tone. However, the word you gets a falling tone because this is the new idea in the sentence.
Let's look at the next example. How are we going to make sandwiches if we don't have any bread? Here, the idea is the same. The bread is old information, so you pronounce it with a rising tone. The sandwiches are new information. This is the first time anyone has talked about sandwiches. New information gets a falling tone. In the next sentence, which word is old information and which word is new information? Sandwiches are old information because we already mentioned them. So pronounce sandwiches with a rising tone. The bakery is new information because this is the first time anyone has mentioned it. So, bakery has a falling tone.
In the last 2 sentences, the pattern is reversed, but the idea is the same. But I think the bakery is closed on Saturdays. It's not Saturday today, it's Sunday. In the first sentence, the bakery is now old information, so it gets a rising tone. The new information, with a falling tone, comes at the end of the sentence. You can see the same pattern in the second sentence. The old information, Saturday, comes first, and the new information, Sunday, is at the end of the sentence.
If you want more practice with this, go back to the dialogue. Pause after each sentence and repeat, trying to copy the intonation. Pay attention to the way intonation changes on the same word as it changes from new to old information. Now let's look at a very important use of intonation, questions. Where did you go for your vacation?
I went to Dubrovnik.
Is that in Croatia?
Yes, on the coast. Have you ever been?
No, never. Did you have a good time?
Very nice, though it's quite touristy.
You got back yesterday, right?
Yeah, late in the evening.
Are you feeling tired?
No, Not too bad, actually. In the dialogue, you heard 6 questions. 3 of them had rising tones, and 3 had falling tones. Do you know why the intonation is different in different questions?
Sometimes, when you're asking a question, you have no idea of the answer. You're asking a question to find out new information. In this case, the question has a falling tone. Where did you go for your vacation? Have you ever been? Did you have a good time? Sometimes, when you ask a question, you already have some idea of the answer. You're asking a question to check something, or to confirm that your idea is right.
In this case, the question has a rising tone. Is that in Croatia? I think Dubrovnik is in Croatia, but I'm asking to make sure. You got back yesterday, right? I had an idea that you got back yesterday, and I'm confirming this with you. Are you feeling tired? You told me you got back late in the evening, so I guess you're tired. This means that the intonation of a question can change depending on the situation. If you use a falling tone, this becomes a question to find new information. This means you really have no idea whether Dubrovnik is in Croatia or not, and you want to know.
You can ask, where did you go for your vacation? If you ask this with a rising tone, it could suggest that you knew the answer before and you just want a reminder. You're checking something you already knew. You're not asking for completely new information. Using this intonation will help you to sound more natural, but it doesn't change the meaning of the question.
I'm sure you've learnt a lot in our class today. Thank you for watching this video and see you in class.